Today, we'll be looking at the dangers in forcing children, the consequences in forcing children to grow up too fast. It is usually called the hurried child syndrome. And how do parents force children to grow up too fast? It's either when you overschedule them, you give them chores, you give them tasks, you give them responsibilities that is way beyond their age. For example, as a mother, you have decided to take the be fruitful and multiply, God's commandment. You have decided to take it personally. So you decide to be giving birth to children every year or every other year. That is not a problem. It becomes a problem when you now make your first child, maybe a girl or a boy, that is barely 10 or so young. You make that child your assistant parent. That child is the one that has to cater for the siblings. You see a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old is the one that has to drag his younger ones to school. He comes back, he's washing their uniform, he's cooking for them, he's helping them with their assignments. 6, 7, 8 years. These things are beyond the physical and mental ability of children. Or you have unrealistic expectations for your children. 8-year-old, you're forcing the child to write common entrance. Sometimes some people's argument is that, oh, the child is exceptionally brilliant. Most times, majority of the children that are even rushed, they are children that are still struggling. For reasons best known to the parent, maybe they are tired of paying school fees, or because their neighbor's child has gone to secondary school and they are just trying to compete with meeting up with the Joneses. They continue to overschedule and overburden these children, drop unrealistic expectations on those children, and it comes with very terrible consequences. Number one is the fact that the child grows up to be a people pleaser. He will rather take care of every other person except himself. There's always anxiety. They are always anxious. They always want to please, because that's how they grow up. They are growing up with abilities. They are growing up with tasks that is beyond them. So they are constantly faced with that burden to please their parents, and that's how they grow. Number two, they find it difficult to ask for help. Because over time they have become the assistant parent. So there's so much responsibility on their shoulder. Their younger ones can really not do much anyway, so it is just them. There's really nobody to ask for help. The parents are relying on them to assist them. The younger ones are looking up to them to do a lot of things. So they grow up finding it difficult asking for help. And you find out that such children are usually prone to different abuse, mostly sexual abuse, because no matter what they are going through, they find it difficult to talk, they find it difficult to seek help. They are just there, internalizing and bearing everything, and it's a huge problem that parents really need to look into. Also, they grow up very bitter. Not all the time, but most times they end up becoming bitter, because they look at their younger ones. Their younger ones are getting, comfort, getting care from the parent, but for them, they are just loaded with responsibility, and it's also a reason for siblings hatred. All they feel towards their siblings is just a sense of responsibility. Most times is not usually love. They just feel that, okay, I'm responsible for you, and they grow up becoming very harsh. Most times they grow up being mean. That's why you see most times a lot of people will tell you, our firstborn is very wicked, our firstborn is very strict. It's because of the way they were forced to grow. They grew up with that sense of responsibility. Love was not really a part of the program. They are also most times very lonely, because they are used to them just being on their own. It's their siblings on one side, it's the parent on the other side, and it's them. Some of them can be lucky. Probably the next sibling to them is very close in age, and then they share responsibility. But most times, the burden is usually on the shoulder of the older child. So they grow up very lonely. And over time, they become prone to depression. They become prone to suicidal thoughts. That's why you wonder these days, a lot of people, it's so easy for them to begin to conceive suicidal thoughts. When you talk to a lot of teenagers these days, you ask them, so when you were feeling this way, what was the first thing you thought? You will be surprised. Majority of them will say, I felt like killing myself. I felt like going to buy sniper.